Amidst a violent thunderstorm raging through the dark night, thick black clouds roll in over a cursed mansion that looms ominously in the rain. Inside the lavish dining hall, the Lufsouth family sits in heavy silence around a long table, the atmosphere thick with unsaid tension. Breaking the oppressive quiet, a young boy named Yuri stands up and politely asks his father for a word. Yuri shocks the table by asking if his father would mind banishing him from the house, kicking off the tail of the outcast final boss. His father pauses with a glass halfway to his mouth, looking up with a menacing glare to ask what Yuri just said. Yuri stands resolute in his vest and trousers, facing down the head of the table without flinching. Suddenly, his older brother bursts into mocking laughter, asking what the hell Yuri is talking about. The brother reminds Yuri that their Lufsouth family is renowned and blood-related to royalty, asking if the boy is still half asleep to suggest leaving. Internally, Yuri ignores the taunts, knowing for a fact that this prestigious house is destined to fall to ruin in the near future. He recognizes this world is identical to Saint Quest, a popular game he played obsessively in his previous life. Every detail matches the game he played 24/7, confirming he has been reincarnated into the very world he knows inside out. He realizes he is now Yuri Lufsouth, the most hated character who poses as an ally only to betray the protagonist 5 years from now. He recalls that 1 year after his future betrayal, the family's plot to overthrow the country will be exposed, leading to everyone's execution except the little sister. Glancing at his second brother Marco, who arrogantly claims their wealth ensures a stable life, Yuri sees only a dead man walking. He knows Marco is destined for a merciless death where he begs for his life with generic lines that showed the developer's laziness. A woman at the table nonchalantly sips her wine, remarking that she thinks the situation is fine, completely oblivious to the doom awaiting them. Yuri shifts his gaze to his eldest sister Miranda, who insults him as a pathetic ape and a liability, unaware of her own grim fate. He remembers that she ironically dies in a pathetic manner, sobbing and begging for mercy despite her current arrogance. Her miserable death earned the game a gloomy reputation, a fate sealed alongside Yuri's own future sacrifice to kill the saint. Snapping back to the present, Yuri bows his head against the table, the weight of his secret knowledge pressing down on him as he prepares to speak. His father, a terrifying figure in the shadows, coldly demands to know why his son is making such an absurd request. The tension in the room spikes so drastically that the woman beside him begins to sweat profusely, terrified by the patriarch's aura. Yuri faces Balin Lufsouth, the head of the family, fully aware he is standing before one of the most dangerous men in the kingdom. He knows Balin is an atrocious villain who handles assassinations for the crown and will eventually mastermind the coup that destroys them all. Realizing that a wrong answer will result in his immediate death, Yuri frantically composes a response that won't antagonize his father. He cleverly lies, claiming he wants to see the outside world to gain experience that will eventually contribute to the family's development and prosperity. Balin narrows his eyes skeptically, repeating the phrase about contributing to their development as if testing the weight of the lie. The dining hall falls into a suffocating silence as the father scrutinizes his son, while the sister watches in nervous anticipation. Balin's voice drops to a menacing growl as he questions how a laggard like Yuri could possibly offer anything of value to the house. The father's terrifying, scrutinizing gaze, leaving Yuri's fate hanging by a thread. Not Lufsouth, the eldest son, closes his eyes in resignation, certain that his brother is done for after such a brazen request. Tension spikes in the silent room as the patriarch's hand suddenly reaches out toward Yuri. Balin admits he never thought the day would come for Yuri to say such a thing, calling it a genuine surprise. Internally panic-stricken, Yuri wonders if he messed up, fearing the worst from his unpredictable father. He recalls how his father slaughtered subordinates for talking back and braces himself for a similar violent fate. Instead of a lethal strike, the large hand gently lands on Yuri's head in a rare gesture of contact. Yuri freezes in sweat as his father taps his shoulder, the physical contact heavy with ambiguous intent. To everyone's shock, Balin praises the boy's determination, calling it admirable resolve. Balin decides to grant the dangerous request, promising to share a portion of his territory with his son. Yuri bows deeply in gratitude as his father commands him to use this opportunity to become a full-fledged lord. Walking away, Yuri thinks that such an imposing presence is exactly what he'd expect from the ringleader of an evil family. A young girl watches him leave, her expression filled with silent concern and confusion. Suddenly, she chases after him through the hallway, crying out for her big brother to stop. Yuri turns around in surprise and recognizes his younger sister, Sasha. Sasha expresses her deep worry, shocked that he would set out on his own at such a tender age. Watching her clasp her hands in prayer, Yuri realizes Sasha is the only kind-hearted member of the entire Lufsouth clan. She admits it isn't her place to stop him since he decided this for himself, feeling like a breath of fresh air in their toxic household. Before he leaves, she hands him a protective charm and asks him to take it for safety. Despite her apparent kindness, Yuri cynically reflects that she is still undeniably a member of this family of crooks. Later that night, the moon hangs high over the silent estate as the events of the dinner settle in. A servant pours wine for the patriarch, boldly remarking that Balin's earlier actions were in bad taste. The servant urges Balin to reconsider, warning that leaving that specific land to Yuri poses far too many risks. Balin ignores the advice and takes a sip of his drink, grimacing as he mutters that it tastes bad. He stares at the glass, philosophizing that wine seems no different from people in its unpredictability. Pouring the expensive liquid onto the floor, he notes that even top-shelf labels have disappointing bottles. Balin admits he planned to dispose of Yuri eventually and was surprised the boy chose to leave by his own will. Looking out over his domain, he decides that if Yuri manages to survive the harsh land, he can still be used to the family's advantage. Meanwhile, Yuri reads his appointment letter, wondering what to do now that he is officially the lord of the village of Alf. He stands in the middle of a bustling market street, clutching the document that seals his immediate future. A knowing smile crosses his face as he realizes he has been sent to the village of Alf, a place he clearly recognizes. Invaders completely ignore the village of Alf, viewing it as a barren wasteland with scarce resources that isn't worth conquering. Walking through the desolate streets, Yuri realizes he must find talented people and build the infrastructure from scratch. However, he pragmatically assumes that any talented individuals in the vicinity are likely already working for his father. Knowing his father's meticulous nature, Yuri reasons that the man wouldn't leave his subordinates unguarded. He comes to a sudden, deliberate halt in the middle of the street. With a heavy sigh, he mutters that he has no choice but to resort to a specific alternative. He arrives at a slave shop, where the merchant greets him with a suspiciously warm welcome. The merchant obsequiously mentions that Yuri's father has always been good to him, hinting at a long-standing relationship. He explains that purchased slaves are bound by a magical contract that physically prevents them from disobeying their master. Yuri internally admits that while it isn't a respectable method, it effectively eliminates the risk of betrayal. The merchant points to a group of potential workers, assuring Yuri that this practice is perfectly legal. A trio of battered slaves stands in heavy chains, their heads bowed in utter misery. The merchant gestures to them, claiming they were carefully handpicked for quality. Internally mocking Yuri as a failure, the merchant asks for the young lord's opinion on the merchandise. Yuri senses the merchant's condescension, realizing the man is thinking something rude about him behind that smile. Ignoring the insult, Yuri decides he will assess the value of the slaves himself. He reflects that his reincarnated form possesses special abilities similar to the players in Saint Quest. Among these gifts, his specific ability happens to be exceptionally special. He prepares to unleash his secret power, the appraising eye. With a sharp focus, he activates the skill, scanning the miserable trio standing before him. As the name implies, this ability allows him to instantly see the detailed status of anyone he looks at. Though shocked to find a skill not present in the original game, he gratefully accepts this perfect tool. He notes that their stats are better than expected, but a specific detail suddenly catches his attention. He is startled to discover that the girl is already under an active contract. The status screen reveals the contractor's name is none other than Balin Lufsouth. Panicked, he realizes it isn't just her, every single one of them is already contracted to his father. He deduces that his father anticipated his arrival and secured contracts with them beforehand. These aren't just slaves, they are likely informants planted by his father, destroying any hope of acquiring faithful servants. Yuri gulps in fear, intimidated by the sheer foresight of the leader of a family of schemers. As the merchant tries to close the sale, Yuri realizes the shopkeeper is complicit in the trap. Yuri abruptly slams his hand down on the counter and excuses himself, signaling a sudden end to the negotiation. He decides to check elsewhere, muttering that he couldn't find anyone who fits his strict criteria among the merchant's stock. The slave merchant stands frozen in silence, sweat beading on his forehead as he watches the young lord leave. Panic sets in as the merchant wonders if Yuri figured out the trap regarding the pre-contracted slaves. Walking through the city, Yuri feels despair creeping in, fearing he won't find anyone free from his father's influence. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks as a realization strikes him. He considers that making a wrong move now could be fatal, noting that the hero's party has very little chance of conspiring with his father. A gruesome vision of his own death flashes before his eyes, reminding him that he is on a one-way path to ruin just like in the game. He violently shakes his head to dispel the terrifying image and refocus on his objective. He questions where he could possibly find someone with absolutely zero ties to both his father and the hero's party. A commotion nearby catches his attention, triggering a sudden epiphany that there is actually one specific person who fits the bill. He spots a girl with animal ears and a tail, immediately recognizing her as the character named Fi. Fi is a beast folk orphan who was enslaved and driven off her land after her mother was killed. In the original game, she is a tragic character fated to die for a sub-event where the hero discovers her corpse. Yuri acknowledges that while her death is a dark element of the game's story, her current status presents a unique opening. He realizes she is the perfect recruit because she has absolutely no connections to either the hero's party or the Luff South family. Determined to secure this rare recruit, Yuri listens intently to the crowd to pinpoint her exact location. Overhearing men talk about hunting down beast folk nearby, he rushes toward the source of the disturbance. His eyes widen in alarm as he realizes the violent hunting they mentioned is happening right now. In an alleyway, two thugs restrain the struggling girl as she screams for them to let her go. Fi fights against the ropes binding her wrists, her body covered in rags and dirt. She pants heavily, eyes wide with terror as she faces her captors. One thug grabs her jaw roughly, sneering that it's a shame she's a beast folk because she has such a pretty face. His partner retorts that beast folk are filthy subhuman trash and only a depraved sicko would be interested in her. Desperate to escape, Fi sinks her teeth into the arm of the man holding her. The thug screams in pain and rage, cursing the fucking cat for biting him. He slams her onto the cobblestones and kicks her, yelling about the possibility of catching a disease from her bite. The other thug suggests they just sell her off quickly to be done with it, ignoring her weak pleas to stop. Yuri steps into the alleyway with a calm demeanor, announcing that he has finally found her. He looks down at the battered girl and confirms her identity by asking if she is Fi. The thugs glare menacingly at the intruder, demanding to know who he thinks he is while towering over him. Yuri meets their aggression with a calm, unwavering stare, his expression revealing zero fear. Internally, he celebrates that his luck is finally turning around, thrilled to have found his specific target so quickly. One of the ruffians suddenly pauses in confusion, realizing he recognizes the boy's face from somewhere. He identifies the intruder as Yuri Luffsouth, the third son of the prestigious Luffsouth family. Sneering, he mocks Yuri's reputation, asking his partner if he remembers that the boy is known as the utter failure of his house. The thugs exchange knowing glances, realizing the golden opportunity that has just walked into their trap. They decide to catch him, planning to blackmail his wealthy family for a huge ransom. Yuri sighs at their predictability and decides to scare them off by using his secret ability. He prepares to unleash stealth, a skill he uses to hide his true abilities and trick those around him. The thugs charge forward with their weapons raised, threatening to beat him to a pulp if he resists. In a blur of motion, Yuri vanishes from their sight, dodging their clumsy attack with supernatural speed. A spiked club smashes into the empty ground with a loud clang as the target completely disappears. Ignorant of their failure, they shout about getting filthy rich while swinging blindly at thin air. Confusion sets in as they look around the empty alley, unable to locate the boy they were just attacking. One thug panics when he realizes his weapon has vanished from his hand, screaming in confusion. His partner freezes in shock, sweat pouring down his face as he senses a dangerous presence right behind him. Yuri reappears instantly behind them, holding a knife to their necks in a display of overwhelming speed. He reflects that stealth is a combat skill for striking vital spots, recalling how difficult it was to fight against in the game. Terrified by his hidden strength, the thugs beg for their lives, realizing he is no laggard as the rumors claimed. Yuri coldly agrees to spare them, but states he has one specific condition for their survival. He commands them to never mess with that girl again. The thugs scream in terror and flee the scene, leaving Yuri and the girl alone in the alley. Fi shyly thanks him, grateful that he stepped in to save her from her captors. She shudders in fear, admitting she is terrified to think about what they would have done to her otherwise. Yuri observes her carefully, noting that she doesn't seem like a bad person. However, he decides he must be absolutely certain and activates his appraising eye to check her status. He stares intently at the confused girl, waiting for the magical skill to reveal her secrets. The status window appears, confirming the words he desperately wanted to see. Contractor, none. Yuri grins in triumph, celebrating that she has no ties to his enemies, making her the perfect recruit. Yuri assesses the catgirl, realizing she is one of the rare individuals in this corrupt town that he can recruit without fear of betrayal. Fi stutters a shy response, but Yuri immediately commands her attention with a shout. He asks if she would grant him a small favor as a token of gratitude for saving her from the thugs. Fi gasps in disbelief when Yuri reveals that he has been searching specifically for someone with her qualities. She immediately panics, screaming that he must be a depraved pervert planning to do erotic things to a beastfolk. Ignoring her outburst, Yuri holds up a finger and clarifies that he requires her for only one specific thing. He grabs her shoulder with determination, announcing that he intends to get her all cleaned up first. With a dramatic flair, he demands that she work for him as his personal maid. The intense atmosphere deflates as Fi stares at him blankly, unable to comprehend the absurd request. As she questions reality, Yuri proudly affirms his choice, marking this moment as his first true step toward becoming a lord. A hairdryer whirs loudly as a maid grooms Fi's hair, preparing the beastfolk girl for her new life in the mansion. Maids take Fi's measurements while she blushes furiously, overwhelmed by the sudden and invasive attention. Fi panics and asks what is happening, to which Yuri calmly replies they are preparing her maid uniform. He declares that from now on, she will serve as his personal maid. Fi blushes and tries to protest, secretly worrying that he might be a beast folk lover, with ulterior motives. Internally, she thinks about how prestigious the Lufsouth family is and how many people would kill to work there. She feels unworthy, believing a clumsy beast folk like her has no place among normal people. Yuri cuts through her self-doubt by stating his reasoning for choosing her is actually quite simple. He looks at her with dead serious eyes and asserts that she is the only one who meets his expectations. Yuri reflects on the dangerous reality that his father has secretly placed spies in every corner of the town to watch him. He deduces that since Fi was destined to die in an unrelated event, she cannot possibly be one of his father's pawns. Convinced she is the precise person he's been looking for, he celebrates the fact that there is almost no fear of betrayal. Fi, unaware of his internal logic, tears up and asks why he wants someone like her. She recalls the abuse she suffered, being called a disgusting, worthless failure by everyone else. Sobbing, she realizes that not once in her life has anyone ever stood up for her or valued her. With tears streaming down her face, she asks Master Yuri if he truly needs her. Yuri looks at her with a confident expression and simply reaffirms that he already told her so. A maid announces that preparations are complete, showing off the finished uniform from behind. Yuri hands Fi the outfit and assigns her very first task as his servant. He commands her to go change into the uniform, which sparkles with an almost magical quality. 10 minutes later, Fi timidly steps out of the changing room, apologizing for the wait. Yuri enthusiastically praises the look, telling her it's super cute, which makes her beam with happiness. Fi suddenly notices Yuri staring intently and asks what is wrong. Yuri hesitates, murmuring to himself as he observes her appearance. Fi starts to worry again about the rumors of people who do unspeakable things to beastfolk. However, as he presses close to her, she feels a warmth from him and decides he is different from those vile people. Yuri abruptly changes the mood, declaring that now that they are dressed, it's time to get this done. Confused by his sudden shift in tone, Fi asks what exactly they need to get done. A sinister, determined grin spreads across Yuri's face as he prepares to head out. He reveals their destination is the slums, noting it's a place he can't exactly tell others about. Yuri leads Fi into the dark, dilapidated alleyways of the slums, ignoring the oppressive atmosphere hanging over the ruins. They walk deeper into the shadows, the silence only broken by the sound of their footsteps on the cobblestones. Yuri notes that his father would never monitor such a remote location, but his thought is cut short by a sudden shout. Fi gasps in horror, convinced that Yuri brought her to this secluded spot to commit depraved acts away from prying eyes. A ragged boy steps out from the darkness, glaring at them with hostility and demanding to know who goes there. The boy claims the area is their spot, refusing to back down as Yuri stands his ground. Analyzing the surroundings, Yuri realizes that these homeless children are using this abandoned area as their secret base. He coldly asks them to leave immediately, stating he has important matters to discuss in private. The boy grits his teeth in rage, accusing Yuri of being just another arrogant noble looking down on them. A frightened little girl tries to pull her brother back, but he shakes her off and refuses to listen to the intruder. She bows her head in apology, explaining that her brother is on edge because he hasn't eaten anything in 2 days. Ignoring the girl's plea, the boy steps forward with clenched fists and threatens violence if they don't leave. Yuri's expression darkens as he declares he will use whatever means necessary to get rid of them. Fi watches in despair, thinking Yuri is a monster for bullying starving orphans on top of abusing beastfolk. The boy screams a defiant challenge, daring the noble to try and force them out if he dares. He swears that street kids like them won't lose to a stuffed shirt noble, preparing to fight for their territory. Suddenly, the sizzle of meat fills the air as Yuri starts cooking, offering them a feast if they agree to leave him alone. The children instantly abandon their anger and devour the food, cheering for the generous noble with tears of joy. Fi stands frozen in confusion, unable to comprehend why he is feeding the children he just threatened to remove. Yuri bribes the boy to keep watch outside, and the kid eagerly accepts the mission to guard his new benefactor. Fi completely misinterprets the situation, terrified that Yuri has posted a guard to cut off her only escape route. A nervous voice stammers in desperation, seemingly bracing for a difficult and painful moment. The plea intensifies as the speaker begs for gentleness in whatever is about to occur. Yuri calmly reassures the worried beastfolk girl that he won't hurt her and there is no need for such anxiety. Focusing his gaze, Yuri activates his special ability, the appraisal eye, to scan her hidden status. The interface reveals her identity as Fi, a beastfolk-made apprentice with generally low stats, though she surprisingly possesses C-rank agility and a dagger skill. Yuri internally confirms his suspicions that her general statistics are indeed quite weak. Muttering to himself, he notes that her high agility and dagger proficiency make her perfectly suited for the role of an assassin, provided she doesn't turn against him. Fi is flustered and confused when Yuri declares they are finished, protesting that they haven't done anything lewd yet. Yuri is completely baffled by her suggestion, repeating the word lewd with genuine confusion. Blushing furiously, Fi stares at him wide-eyed and asks just what exactly he had been thinking about if not that. The master scolds his maid for her disrespect and calls her a complete idiot for harboring such a misunderstanding. Later at a weapon shop away from the city, Fi realizes that Yuri had simply been assessing her latent abilities earlier. Still annoyed, she points out that such an assessment could easily have been performed back at the house. Yuri explains that his appraisal eye is a secret trump card hidden even from his father, making reckless use in the mansion impossible. As Fi falls silent with a complicated expression, the shopkeeper observes the tension and asks if the two are on bad terms. Ignoring the question, Yuri examines a blade and comments that he has found a pretty good one. Without ceremony, he hands the weapon over to Fi. As she takes it, he reveals that his earlier appraisal discovered she possesses a specific skill with daggers. Fi is stunned to learn she has skills at all, noting that most people are lucky to have even one or two. She lowers her gaze, absorbing this revelation with a quiet, contemplative whisper. Tears form in her eyes as she realizes that after being called useless for so long, she finally has a redeeming quality. Filled with new determination, she strikes a pose with the weapon and vows to do her absolute best for Master Yuri. Fi cheerfully declares she will treasure the gift forever while following Yuri down the street. Yuri coldly reminds her that a dagger is merely a disposable tool, not a keepsake. Suddenly, a young boy interrupts them, calling out to Yuri as the meet big brother. Yuri recognizes the urchin from their earlier encounter and immediately retorts that the boy is just a brat. The boy ignores the insult to urgently inform Yuri that someone has been actively looking for him. Yuri asks who it is, and the boy prepares to deliver the surprising news. With a grin, the boy reveals that the seeker is none other than Lady Emilina the Saint. Fi tilts her head in confusion at the name, while the revelation hangs heavily in the air. Yuri recalls that Emilina is a church-affiliated saint who wields powerful holy magic and is destined to join the hero's party. Terror grips him as he visualizes a gruesome future where this dangerous woman ultimately decapitates him. Desperate to escape this reality, he asks the boy if he perhaps misheard toilet instead of saint, but the boy strikes down that hope immediately. Yuri spirals into a panic, muttering that this event is impossible and she shouldn't be meeting him at this point in the timeline. He realizes that if he meets Emilina or the other hero members now, the story will progress exactly like the original game toward his total ruin. Solidifying his resolve, he determines that he must avoid the main characters like the plague to prevent the worst-case scenario. As he continues to mumble about his potential doom at the hands of the hero's party, the street urchin complains that Yuri is creeping him out. Fi interrupts his spiraling thoughts by squeezing his arm and looking up at him with shining eyes. She completely misinterprets his panic as impressiveness, praising him for attracting the interest of someone so important. Yuri snaps out of his daze and turns to his maid with sudden, intense urgency. Grabbing her, he declares that they are getting out of there right now. The scene shifts to the bustling cityscape where the church towers silently watch over the chaos below. A commotion erupts in the streets as the crowd excitedly announces the arrival of Lady Saint. Observers note that Lady Emilina remains as popular as ever among the common folk. Her overwhelming charm and beauty make such adoration completely expected. Fans swarm around her, begging for handshakes as she steps through the crowd. Emilina flusteredly thanks them, unsure if her awkward interactions are acceptable. She stiffly turns her head when a fan asks her to look their way, asking if she is doing it right. The requests continue as someone asks for a wink, which she attempts with clumsy effort. Pushed to her limit, she forces a trembling peace sign while her attendant looks on in disbelief. Her companion scolds her for dawdling and reminds her that she is supposed to be looking for a specific person. Emilina looks back blankly, feigning ignorance about the purpose of their outing. While her attendant questions her sanity, Emilina passionately argues that fulfilling the people's wishes is the sacred duty of the church. She shifts the topic to the rumors of Yuri from the Lufsouth family rescuing a beast girl from hooligans. Comparing his actions to her own past heroism of freeing illegally imprisoned slaves, she sees a kindred spirit. Her attendant tries to reason with her, pointing out that Yuri is still just a child and not an adult. Emilina ignores the logic, fantasizing that he might be a prophesied figure chosen by God to strike down evil. Gripping her staff with sudden intensity, she prepares to make a declaration. Despite her attendant's sigh at her recklessness, Emilina announces that she has decided to make Yuri her partner. Yuri dismisses the boy's gratitude for the tip about the saint, noting that the meat treat was payment enough. The boy greedily demands more meat in exchange for future intel, causing Yuri to realize the kid is completely addicted. Yuri coldly shuts down the negotiation, announcing that there will be no more meat provided starting tomorrow. Desperate to keep the food coming, the boy offers to lick Yuri's shoes and frantically asks what he did wrong. Falling to his knees, the boy begs for mercy and reveals that everyone in the slums is currently dying of hunger. He confesses that until now, they had never even tasted proper meat before. Fi looks at her master with silent judgment, causing Yuri to stand awkwardly under the weight of her gaze. Yuri tries to justify his refusal by explaining that he is leaving town tomorrow, while Fi mutters that he is acting heartless. He bluntly informs Fi that she is coming with him, leaving her shocked that they are departing so suddenly. Yuri explains that the saint is hunting for him and he has no way of knowing what his scheming father is plotting. Time is of the essence to reach his land, so he argues they have no time to waste feeding meat to street brats. The boy stares up in utter devastation, whispering a hopeless denial at the news. Fi looks down at the crushed child and admits she feels kind of bad for him, making Yuri hesitate. Defeated by his own conscience, Yuri lets out a heavy sigh and scratches his head in frustration. Relenting, he tells the boy he will show him a good hunting ground, but demands something in exchange. The boy's face lights up with a radiant glow as Yuri instructs him to gather all the other brats together. As the boy dashes off shouting confirmation, Fi teases Yuri about his earlier claim that they were in a hurry. Yuri grumbles that it would be a pain in the neck if the orphans held a grudge against him for abandoning them. After a short journey, Yuri announces that they have arrived at the destination. He presents a secluded area to the group, calling it a good hidden spot. Yuri explains that the area is populated mostly by low-level monsters that even children should be able to hunt easily. The boy stares in wonder, amazed that such a resource existed so close to them without their knowledge. Yuri instructs the boy to go secure today's haul for their dinner, prompting a cheer of excitement. The children scream battle cries as they charge toward the small animals, eager for meat. Fi and Yuri watch as the children successfully catch prey, with Fi noting they seem to have gotten the hang of it. With sparkling eyes, Fi asks if she can join the hunt, and Yuri gives her permission to go ahead. As he watches them run, Yuri reflects that the orphans won't have to starve anymore thanks to this knowledge. He reassures himself that as long as he avoids Emilina the Saint, everything will proceed according to his plan. Suddenly, a voice behind him says, "Oh," and he freezes as a shadow looms over him. The unseen figure observes the scene, commenting that there seem to be many people gathered here. Yuri freezes in terror as he realizes the person behind him is already speaking, his mind racing with denial. He turns to find Saint Emilina standing there, innocently asking if he is holding an event of some sort. Panic sets in as Yuri wonders how she managed to figure out his location so quickly. Emilina steps closer through the rustling leaves, noting that seeing him now confirms her suspicions. With intense, almost manic eyes, she identifies him as Mr. Yuri Lufsouth and calls him a menace. Yuri realizes she intends to invite him to her party and despairs that she has already caught up to him. He spirals into dread, convinced that things will play out exactly as they did in the game, leading to his ruin. Desperate to escape, he decides to play dumb and laughs nervously, wondering aloud who she is talking about. Emilina is immediately flustered, blushing deeply as she panics that she might have mistaken him for someone else. Yuri watches her confusion, fearing that she plans to ask every guy in the forest until she finds him. Seizing the chance to escape, Yuri quickly announces that he will be on his way. Emilina stops him, demanding to know what he and the children are doing in such a place. With a heavy sigh, Yuri admits that he showed them this hunting ground. He explains that since orphans can hardly make a living in town, he did this so they wouldn't have to starve anymore. Emilina is struck silent by his words, her face flushing with emotion as she processes his apparent selflessness. Yuri attempts to end the conversation, stating that he is busy and must take his leave now. Before he can move, Emilina suddenly grabs his hand, stopping him in his tracks. Her eyes sparkle with adoration as she exclaims how admirable his actions are. Yuri is baffled, realizing she has completely misinterpreted the situation and sees him as a kind-hearted soul helping poor children. As he tries to pull his hand away and end the encounter, he is suddenly interrupted. Fi cheerfully calls out to him by name, instantly blowing his cover. She happily shows off the big rabbit she caught, wagging her tail and oblivious to the danger she just caused. Yuri freezes, his mind going blank at the sound of his name. In a panic, he lifts Fi to throw her aside, desperate to silence the incriminating words she just spoke. He screams that she didn't say that, furiously denying the reality of the situation. Internally, he groans, doubting that even someone as gullible as Emilina would buy such a frantic excuse. To his shock, Emilina accepts his denial, apologizing for mishearing things while Yuri celebrates her stupidity. Knowing he is on thin ice, Yuri resolves to hightail it out of there before he messes up again. He dashes away at full speed, tucking Fi under his arm as a voice calls out, "By the way." Emilina appears instantly at his side in a burst of speed, asking where he is headed. Yuri is horrified that Emilina closed the distance in a single dash, realizing too late that she is a damn monster. She politely asks if he would care to chat a bit more, confirming his worst fears. Panic sets in as he frantically wonders what he should do to escape this situation. A sudden scream pierces the air, startling both the saint and the noble. A ferocious roar echoes through the forest, announcing a new threat. Yuri is shocked to see the guardian of the forest, wondering why such a powerful creature is here. He suddenly remembers a game mechanic where rare monsters appear when a high-status character enters the area. Realizing that only small fries usually inhabit this ground, he deduces the guardian was lured by Emilina's high level. Emilina clutches her staff nervously as she processes the dangerous situation. The monstrous wolf grins maliciously as it corners the terrified street urchin. Emilina dashes forward with incredible speed, whispering a refusal to let the boy die. She lands between them, screaming for the beast to get away from him. Standing firm, she declares that the child is not the monster's opponent. Saint Emilina brandishes her weapon and vows that she will be the one to fight. Fi blushes with admiration at the cool display, while Yuri watches with a flat expression. Emilina cracks her knuckles and steels herself for combat. Yuri immediately turns to his maid and suggests they run while they have the chance. Fi is appalled by his cowardice, shouting that it is horrible and uncool to leave them behind. Yuri sighs and begins to explain a crucial fact she might not be aware of. He tells her to look closely as Emilina's expression shifts into one of intense focus. As Emilina engages the beast, Yuri reveals that the saint is actually a broken character. He explains that despite being a healer, she possesses monstrous strength. With the sound of violent impacts echoing in the background, Yuri casually tells Fi to get ready to leave. Ina unleashes a flurry of devastating slashes, tearing through the monster's defenses with ease. The beast collapses into a sizzling heap as the boy stammers his gratitude to his savior. Ina smiles brightly, expressing her genuine relief that the child didn't get hurt. Yuri smugly points out that he knew she would be fine, while Fi marvels that she took it out by herself. Just as Yuri begins to say they should be safe now, a sickening crack interrupts him. A second roar shakes the area, signaling that the danger is not over. Blood sprays into the air as another wolf ambushes Ina, slashing her across the back. A second massive werewolf emerges from the smoke, causing the cat-eared maid to scream in horror that there is yet another enemy. The defender realizes too late that he let down his guard as the situation spirals out of control. The young boy cries out that the nun is bleeding profusely, but she smiles and tells him not to worry about her injury. Despite her calm reassurances, the cut on her side stings sharply and is visibly quite deep. As the boy tries to assist her, a heavy thump vibrates through the ground, announcing the monster's immediate arrival. The hulking werewolf towers over the helpless pair, its tongue lolling out in anticipation of a feast as it prepares to strike. A violent shudder runs through the victims as they freeze in the face of overwhelming death. Observing from a distance, the rogue realizes the situation is dire because he won't be able to cast healing magic in time. Desperate cries for someone to help echo through the air as the beast lunges at its prey. In the nick of time, the rogue activates his hidden skill, Assassination, to intercept the fatal attack. A thrown dagger slams into the werewolf's head with lethal force, spraying blood across the air. The impact hits with tremendous force, momentarily stunning the creature in its tracks. The werewolf roars in agony as the rogue steps out from the shadows to confront it. Another attack pierces the beast, causing it to gag in pain as the rogue presses the advantage. Clicking his tongue, the rogue notes that his surprise assault wasn't enough to take the durable monster out completely. He calls out to the nun to finish the enemy off, noting that she has already managed to heal herself. The nun wipes her mouth with a fierce expression and shouts that she is all right and ready to fight. Her chest glows with blinding light as she begins to weave a powerful holy magic spell. She summons a massive cross-shaped weapon and unleashes the Thousand Cross upon the enemy. A relentless barrage of energy beams rains down, shredding the werewolf into nothingness. The group watches in silence as the overwhelming attack carves up the landscape and obliterates the threat. The battle ends with the nun standing amidst the falling debris, her expression unreadable. The maid and the children stare wide-eyed, completely stunned by the display of divine power. The rogue admits to himself that while he knew she was broken, her power exceeded all his expectations. He concludes with a shiver that she is truly one terrifying woman. Turning to her, he thanks her, acknowledging that he was able to protect the children solely because of her help. She smiles gently and replies that she is glad to hear everyone is safe. As she turns to leave with Fi, the rogue attempts to make his own exit. Suddenly, she grabs his arm with a tight grip and demands he wait a second. With a beaming smile, she declares that she is fine with him not being Yuri Luff South anymore, leaving him shocked. The protagonist stares in horror as the saint begins to speak, realizing she is about to utter the words he fears most. She awkwardly explains that she is looking for someone with the skills to join the hero's party, causing him to panic and interrupt her. He frantically struggles to pull away, terrified that if she invites him now, his doom is sealed. In the chaotic scuffle to escape, his hand accidentally lands squarely on her chest with a distinct squeeze. The saint gasps in shock, freezing completely as the inappropriate contact registers. A deep, burning blush rapidly consumes her face as she is overcome with intense embarrassment. He stammers that it was a mistake while she demands to know what on earth he thinks he is doing. The catgirl maid sneers that boys really do prefer them big and warns him to stay out of it to avoid making things worse. Calculating quickly, he realizes that making the saint hate him is the perfect strategy to ensure she never invites him. The saint looks at him with hopeful, teary eyes and asks if he surely didn't do it on purpose. He ruthlessly crushes her hope by declaring loudly that he absolutely did it on purpose. He laughs like a villain while she snaps, screaming that he is worse than trash and the absolute lowest scum. Even the maid looks at him with utter disdain, muttering that he is a pervert. The saint furiously grips her staff, regretting that she ever lowered herself to invite him to her party. She decides to abandon him and announces she will go straight to Yuri Luffsouth to invite him instead. The protagonist gasps in sheer terror, realizing that her backup plan is to recruit his true identity. He envisions a nightmare scenario where his father kills him for bringing shame to the family name with rumors of fondling the saint. Oblivious to his internal panic, the saint marches off to visit the Lufsouth estate while he stands frozen in fear. A few hours later, the group flees in a carriage, desperate to escape the city before the saint uncovers the truth. The carriage rattles steadily along the road as they put distance between themselves and the impending disaster. The horses trudge tirelessly forward, carrying the driver and his passengers away from the danger zone. Inside the wagon, the maid worries about the orphans they left behind, but the protagonist just sighs in relief that they survived. He dismisses her concerns with a nonchalant comment. However, he can't shake the nagging feeling that he has seen those children somewhere before in the game. He decides not to brood over it, reasoning that they weren't part of the main story and he already solved their food issue. Unbeknownst to him, his intervention prevented a catastrophic future event known as the Great Insurrection of the Orphans. Sitting on the bench, he shifts his focus to the more pressing matter of how they will survive going forward. The maid notes his mumbling as he whispers to himself that although he escaped the invitation, they are not in the clear yet. He vows to break free from his destined route to ruin and crush every death flag in his path. With renewed determination, he orders Fi to put his back into it and drive harder. The carriage speeds toward the horizon as he sets his sights on an unseen land. Yuri's hand glows with magical energy, prompting the curious maid to ask what her master is doing. Yuri pauses, looking down at his hand with a sudden realization. He explains that he is attempting to use magic to refrigerate their supplies so the food won't spoil. Ignoring Fi's disinterest, Yuri mutters that combining wind and water magic to create ice is proving more difficult than expected. Fi eagerly pipes up that she wants to practice something too, causing Yuri to consider a suitable task. With a swirl of earth magic, he conjures a stone knife levitating above his palm. He suggests that she practice her aim by throwing the knives out of the carriage to hunt for prey. Beaming with excitement, Fi thanks her master and eagerly grabs the weapon to begin her training. Yuri wishes her luck as she turns toward the passing landscape, determined to hunt down a lot of prey. Fi unleashes a powerful throw, sending the knife whistling out of the speeding carriage. Sounds of heavy impacts echo from outside as the knife strikes everything except a target. Tears stream down Fi's face as she gloomily admits that she failed to land a single hit. Yuri calmly notes that hitting a target from a moving carriage is an incredibly difficult feat. Refocusing on his own magic, Yuri succeeds in creating ice but realizes he needs a more effective refrigeration method. Suddenly, a high-pitched scream pierces the air, causing Fi to jolt in surprise. Fi frantically alerts Yuri to the scream coming from outside, prompting him to ask for details. Peering outside, they spot a group of travelers being ambushed by armed bandits. A leering bandit corners a woman, commenting on her quality with malicious intent. The father screams in desperation, demanding the thugs take their hands off his daughter. Fi turns to her master and asks what he intends to do about the villains outside. The bandit leader laughs maniacally, vowing to strip the wealthy victims of every single coin. Yuri observes the scene with a cold, calculating gaze as he adjusts his equipment. Calculating the potential profit, Yuri decides that securing funding for his land development is the top priority. He declares that they will save the victims only to loot them, causing Fi to scream that he is no better than the bad guys. Ignoring her moral outrage, Yuri signals Fi to prepare for the engagement. With a sharp command, he directs their carriage to head straight toward the ambush. The bandit leader roars orders to kill the men and capture the women alive. Yuri interrupts the slaughter, sarcastically noting that the bandits seem to be enjoying their crimes. The carriage abruptly stops in the middle of the road, revealing Yuri perched ominously on the roof. The confused bandits look up at the intruder and demand to know who the hell the brat is. Yuri smirks confidently and suggests the bandits cool their heads for a change. With a focused expression, he channels his energy to unleash a powerful spell. Combining water and wind magic, he casts Ice Meteor, raining destruction down upon his enemies. As the dust settles, Yuri wonders if his quick victory is a result of leveling up from his recent magic training. He decides to verify his stats later with his appraising eye, surprised by how easily he dispatched the group. Fi watches the devastation in disbelief, rubbing her eyes to make sure she isn't dreaming. The bandit leader trembles in shock, unable to comprehend how his entire crew was wiped out in a single strike. Sweat pours down his face as he realizes that at this rate, he will be the next to die. Desperation seizes him, and his wild eyes lock onto the defenseless girl nearby. He screams at the brat, to look over here, hoping to regain control of the situation. Grabbing the girl by her hair and holding a blade to her, he threatens to kill her if Yuri makes a single move. Yuri coolly asks, "Who else, dumbass?" and questions if the bandit is actually talking to him. The bandit pauses in confusion as Yuri states he thinks the man is talking to the wrong person. As Yuri turns to walk away, a magical projectile suddenly impales the bandit from behind. Fi leans out of the carriage window, flushed and panting, and announces that she finally landed a hit. She cheers happily, celebrating her success in taking down the threat. Yuri explains that Fi had been aiming at the careless bandit the entire time. He praises her aim, and she smugly replies that she can hit her target when the carriage isn't moving. Yuri declares he will take care of the rest and begins weaving water and wind magic together again. The remaining enemy backs away in terror, begging him to stop and stay away. Ignoring the pleas, Yuri strikes with Ice Blade, slashing through the air with a frozen sword. A heavy rumble shakes the area as the attack connects with devastating impact. The rescued girl stares at Yuri with wide, trembling eyes, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. She clutches her chest and thanks him profusely, saying words fail to express her gratitude. The older man steps forward and introduces himself as a representative of the Muller Company. Yuri realizes with interest that the people he saved are merchants. He notes internally that establishing a connection with merchants is invaluable for his land development plans. Putting on a friendly facade, he tells them to rest at ease and asks if bandits are common in this area. The merchant suddenly realizes he completely forgot to mention a crucial fact about the region. He reveals that locals warn travelers to beware of bandits and the Lufsouth family, leaving Yuri stunned. Yuri freezes in place as he processes the merchant's words, realizing with dread that the infamous Lufsouth family is his own. The merchant passionately rants that the family holds a tyrannical monopoly over the capital's market and acts with complete impunity. He screams with genuine hatred that every single person from that house is a literal piece of human trash. Yuri stands in stunned silence, his expression blank as he absorbs the sheer vitriol directed at his lineage. Fi suddenly stomps onto the scene, annoyed and scolding her master for taking so long to regroup. Yuri awkwardly praises her efforts to distract her, though she pouts that she wanted the validation much earlier. The merchant interrupts the moment, realizing with a start that he has forgotten his manners. He politely asks for the name of his savior, apologizing for forgetting to ask amidst the chaos. Yuri stammers and sweats nervously, terrified to reveal his identity to the very people who just cursed his family. Fi smacks him on the back and yells at him to stop being an idiot and introduce himself properly. Bursting with pride, she loudly announces that he is the incredible Yuri Lufsouth. The merchants recoil in absolute horror, stammering the hated name in disbelief as the realization crashes down on them. Yuri covers his face with his hand, groaning internally that this situation has turned into the absolute worst-case scenario. He laments that his plan to build friendly relationships has failed, as the merchants now grovel before him in abject fear. Meanwhile, at a distant estate, a shadowy figure observes that Yuri has already begun his journey. The man muses on the oddity of Yuri taking a beastkin as a servant without actually purchasing her as a slave. He admits to himself that he had no clue Master Yuri harbored a fondness for beastkin. Swirling his drink, he notes that this development comes as quite a surprise. He peers through his wineglass with a cold gaze, wondering if Yuri has somehow seen through his schemes. A subordinate dismisses the idea, arguing that Yuri isn't capable of thinking that far ahead and advising they play it safe. The nobleman counters that if Yuri is planning to betray him, he can no longer be kept alive as a useful pawn. He coldly orders his subordinate to unleash monsters on Yuri the moment he arrives at his new territory. Changing his mind to a more brutal approach, he commands the massacre of everyone in Yuri's land instead. Two figures slam their foreheads into the dirt, groveling in abject terror before their savior. Yuri stares down at them with a mixture of shock and awkwardness, unsure how to react to such extreme prostration. Flustered by their intensity, he hurriedly insists that they really do not need to apologize so profusely. Observing their genuine fear, Yuri deduces that this merchant likely has no connection to his father's corrupt operations. He silently calculates that building a relationship with an independent merchant could be extremely valuable for his future plans. The merchant introduces himself as Alan Muller and begs forgiveness for bad-mouthing the Lufsouth family after being saved. Alan admits he was terrified because he has been practically banished by the family, prompting a confused reaction from Yuri. Arsha sighs with immense relief that their bloodline won't be extinguished, leaving Yuri to wonder what kind of monster they think he is. Yuri watches them relax and feels a wave of relief that he managed to ease their minds at least a little bit. Alan suddenly realizes he hasn't asked the most important question and inquires what brings Master Yuri to this remote area. Yuri casually explains that he is traveling to the land his father gave him as a parting gift, causing Alan to freeze. The realization hits Alan and Arsha like a lightning bolt, and they scream in unison that he is their new lord. They immediately throw themselves back onto the floor in a fresh panic, forcing Yuri to demand they stop groveling this instant. Later on the wagon, Alan asks nervously if Yuri is sure about giving them a ride, while Arsha watches in disbelief. Yuri smiles with hidden ambition, seeing them as valuable connections, while Alan shudders thinking the smile hides a sinister plot. Behind the wagon, the captured bandits scream in agony as they are dragged along the rough ground. Yuri cheerfully remarks that he will turn them in for bounty money, ignoring their desperate pleas for mercy. The bandits beg for the carriage to slow down while Alan awkwardly watches Yuri return to his crafting. Yuri examines his creation with a critical eye, muttering that there is still much room for improvement. Alan's curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks Master Yuri what exactly he has been working on all this time. Yuri presents a box-like device and explains that it is a refrigerator designed to cool and store food. Alan stares in shock, questioning if such a tool wouldn't require an enormous and impractical cost of mana. Yuri smirks confidently and corrects Alan, stating that he has the wrong idea about how it works. He launches into a technical explanation of how he utilizes chemical changes and combined magic to efficiently create cold air. However, he admits the current prototype has a fatal flaw because it requires a constant manual infusion of mana. Alan listens intently and interjects that he believes there is actually no need for constant manual infusion. To Yuri's surprise, Alan suggests that the issue can be easily fixed by utilizing magic stones. He explains that monster magic stones contain innate wind and water effects that can power the cooling process automatically. Alan's eyes light up with greed as he realizes this means they can mass-produce the device and build a massive business. Yuri stares back with a contemplative look, realizing the vast potential of this new information. Yuri analyzes the magic stones, realizing that items he considered mere cash fodder actually have significant value for his invention. Suddenly, Alan Muller bursts into the scene with a loud shout, startling Yuri out of his thoughts. With intense enthusiasm, Alan insists on obtaining exclusive rights to sell the refrigerator through his company. Arsha apologizes for her father's fuss, while Yuri internally notes the merchant's sharp wit before promising to think it over. The carriage comes to a halt as they finally arrive at their destination. Yuri declares that their first order of business in the city of Searsbark is to turn in the bandits and collect the bounty. Heavy footsteps echo on the floor as armored figures approach the group from all sides. Armed guards surround them with drawn weapons, shouting for the group to freeze immediately. Yuri, Phi, and Alan look around in confusion, completely blindsided by the sudden hostility. A guard accuses Alan of being the wicked merchant who preys on goodwill travelers. The officer declares that he is arresting Alan Muller right then and there. Yuri steps forward to intervene, confusedly pointing out that they were the ones who were attacked. The corrupt guard sneers that there are witnesses who claim Alan attacked innocent people. Alan goes pale with shock, unable to believe the blatant fabrication being presented as truth. One of the captured bandits smirks from the floor and falsely confirms the guard's story. The bandit lies shamelessly, claiming they were scared to death when Alan's group attacked them without provocation. Yuri narrows his eyes at the bandit, realizing the scumbag is trying to pull a fast one. The guard reveals his true colors, stating this is all Alan's fault for declining the Viscount's offer. He taunts the merchant, asking if he understands the situation now. Alan stammers in horror, realizing that his refusal is the sole reason for this setup. Yuri demands that Alan explain exactly what happened between him and the Viscount. Alan hesitantly reveals that Viscount Jesloff had approached him with a proposition. The noble promised to make Alan his personal merchant, but only if he allowed the Viscount to sleep with his daughter Arsha. Phi is disgusted by the lowlife's demand, while Alan explains that he obviously declined the vile offer. The guard bursts into laughter, finding amusement in their desperate situation. With a twisted grin, he reveals that Lord Jesloff himself hired the bandits to attack them. He gloats that they are doomed, as fighting back makes them criminals and doing nothing makes them dead meat. Alan collapses in despair, overwhelmed by the hopelessness of their entrapment. Yuri simply huffs, realizing that this entrapment was their plan all along. He notes that he smelled a rat the moment such a huge number of soldiers came to meet them. Yuri realizes that the entire ambush was a calculated ruse concocted by the city's ruler to frame Alan. Heavy footsteps echo across the pavement as a voice triumphantly announces that they have finally captured Njeller. Viscount Jeslu sneers at the group, falsely accusing them of being a wicked lot who harm innocent travelers. He summons the guard captain and coldly declares that their fate has already been decided. To everyone's shock, he announces that the main offender, Alan Njeller, is to be executed immediately. He ruthlessly orders his men to tie the merchant up and cut off his head right here and now. Yuri observes the tyranny with disgust, realizing that this man uses his authority over the land to fabricate crimes at will. The Viscount turns his predatory gaze toward Arsha, identifying her as the accomplice to the alleged crimes. Arsha stands frozen in silence, trembling under the weight of the disgusting attention directed at her. A wave of revulsion hits the group as the Viscount lecherously licks his lips in anticipation. He declares that he will personally administer her punishment in private, insinuating a horrific fate. Tears stream down Arsha's face as she whispers a refusal, terrified by his advances. Ignoring her distress, the Viscount beckons her closer with a greedy demand to come here. Yuri steps in front of the girl and catches the noble's hand, firmly telling him that is enough. Arsha looks up in surprise and relief, calling out to Master Yuri as he intervenes. The Viscount explodes in rage, demanding to know if the Cretan realizes he will be executed as well for this insolence. Yuri looks at the man with disbelief, thinking that this guy is completely insane to threaten him so casually. Looming over the boy, Jeslu vows to teach the ignorant brat a painful lesson about hierarchy. He proclaims that defying someone of higher standing is considered a grave offense in this town. Yuri smirks internally, noting that the tyrant simply uses his status as a convenient excuse to justify his madness. Standing his ground, Yuri asks the Viscount if he truly believes he has the power to execute him. Jeslu pauses in confusion, taken aback by the boy's sudden display of confidence. Recovering quickly, he sneers that culling a worthless commoner brat like him would be a simple matter. Yuri grips his collar, preparing to reveal the truth that will shatter the Viscount's arrogance. Jeslu roars that he is a man of absolute authority and no one can oppose him. He screams at the guards to capture the cur at once, losing his patience completely. The soldiers slowly advance on Yuri with drawn swords, ready to cut him down. Unflinching, Yuri addresses the noble calmly and asks about the rules of hierarchy in this town. He drops the bombshell question of whether a mere Viscount has the authority to execute someone from a ducal family. The Viscount freezes in his tracks, letting out a confused sound as the implication sinks in. Yuri steps forward with a calm demeanor and politely offers to introduce himself properly since he forgot earlier. He declares with absolute confidence that he is Yuri Loversouth, dropping the name like a heavy weight. The Viscount scoffs at the name, remarking that he was wondering what kind of bluff the boy would come up with. He sneers that unfortunately for Yuri, he is well acquainted with the people of the House of Loversouth. Jeslu boasts that he once had an audience with the ducal family in the royal capital, but then he pauses. His memory sparks as he stares at the boy, recalling a specific face from that past meeting. A look of pure horror dawns on his face as he realizes he has definitely seen that face before. Panic seizes him as his mind races, screaming internally that he forgot such a crucial detail. Yuri observes the man's terrified expression and notes that realization has finally dawned on him. With a dark smile, Yuri confirms that Jeslu has realized he just crossed someone of far higher standing. A heavy silence hangs in the air as the Viscount processes the magnitude of his error. Yuri presses the attack, adding that there is even more to address regarding his conduct. He coldly accuses Jeslu of framing the merchants under his patronage with false crimes to execute them. Turning his gaze to Arsha, he adds the crime of trying to force the girl into his bed against her will. Yuri leans in with a threatening aura and addresses the trembling noble directly. He asks casually what the Viscount thinks his father would do if he learned of these despicable deeds. Jeslu begins to sweat profusely, his eyes bulging with terror as the threat sinks in. He violently slams his head into the stone floor, screaming his deepest apologies. Desperately kissing the ground, he begs forgiveness for his grave disrespect, claiming he had no idea Yuri was the heir. He implores Yuri to keep this secret from his father, even offering to lick his shoes in abject submission. Yuri watches the pathetic display coolly, thinking that bringing up his family name was definitely the right call. Internally, he admits he couldn't actually report this to his father since he has already been disowned. While Jeslu continues to beg, Yuri decides to ruthlessly exploit his family's reputation to his advantage. Suddenly, the Viscount gasps as if struck by an idea and shouts that he knows how to fix this. He loudly declares to the stunned merchants that the entire incident was just a terrible misunderstanding on his part. Turning on his own men, he orders the guards to throw the bandits into prison immediately. The bandits stare in disbelief as their employer betrays them to save his own skin. They protest feebly that they were simply following Lord Jeslua's direct instructions. As they are dragged away, they lament that this betrayal is beyond cruel. The scene shifts to the quiet night sky, marking the end of the chaotic confrontation. Viscount Jeslu chases after the group, offering increased rewards and begging Yuri to keep his mishap a secret from his father. Ignoring the desperate noble, Yuri turns his attention to Arsha and calls out her name to check on her. Arsha looks up in confusion as Yuri reassures her with a calm smile that she is fine now. He explains that he made sure to sternly warn Jeslu against ever using his power for nefarious deeds again. Yuri confidently declares that with this warning, the Viscount won't dare think of bothering her in any way anymore. Arsha bows her head deeply, stuttering that she cannot thank him enough for his great help. Blushing furiously, she shyly admits that he looked absolutely dashing while berating Lord Jeslu. Alan suddenly interrupts the moment, eager to express his own profound gratitude to their savior. The merchant humbly notes that Yuri has saved their lives not just once, but twice now. Alan pauses with a sudden realization, pointing out that Yuri said something extremely important earlier. Yuri looks back with a blank expression, asking what exactly he said that was so significant. Alan repeats the phrase, "merchant under your patronage," realizing Yuri publicly declared them as his protected subordinates. Overwhelmed with emotion, Alan shouts that it is a great honor to receive the seal of approval from the Lufsouth family. He swears a solemn oath to do his utmost best to serve his new master as a loyal merchant. Yuri sweats nervously and thanks him, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the man's intense enthusiasm. Suddenly shifting his tone, Alan adjusts his glasses and asks Master Yuri if he can ask a question incidentally. With a serious expression, the merchant asks if Yuri happens to have a fiancée. Yuri answers plainly that of course he doesn't, causing Alan to shout that he is pleased to hear that. Yuri realizes the father is unhinged as Alan physically shoves Arsha toward him, insisting he take her hand. Yuri sighs and tells Arsha she needs to stop doing everything her father tells her to and assert her own will. To his surprise, Arsha blushes and thanks him kindly for having her, leaving Yuri confused about why she accepts the proposal. Panic sets in as Yuri backs away, telling them to stay away as they encroach on his personal space. He frantically excuses himself, declaring that he needs to go to his territory immediately. Watching the chaotic scene unfold, Fi sighs and remarks that her master really has it rough.